What's up, guys? Welcome to Pillar Talk. I'm here with Coach.
How you guys doing? Good to see you guys again on this lovely Wednesday.
Coach K. That'll be your new soundbite. I'm here with Coach K.
With a little whistle in the background.
We've got Bobb Vergiels with us, as you can see. And real quick, let's get to our sponsors. We're sponsored by Kennedy Health and Wellness, BrainJerk Entertainment, the Monroe County Reporters, Smoker Society, the Lil Brown Jug, Amaya's Fresh Mexican Grill, 8 Mile Vodka, Mint Cannabis, IWR, Lane's Pizza, and Just Drive with Jess.
Appreciate them.
Appreciate you all. So,
I got hungry just listening to the sponsors.
I know, right? Every day. So, Bob, tell us who you are.
Bobb Vergiels is my name. I'm like really old. And I grew up in Monroe County. We born in Toledo, went to Ida High School. We moved to Ida, to our new house in Ida, on November 22nd, 1963. Now, history buffs, let's see if you remember what that date was. That was the date that President Kennedy was shot.
Oh,
And that was the day that we moved into Monroe County. Went to Ida High School. People said, "Did you go to Ida High?" And I said, "No, I was straight." And graduated from Monroe County Community College, went on to Western Michigan, graduated from there, came back, got a job with the Monroe Evening News. Oh, by the way, while I went to Monroe Community College, I was on a radio station called WVMO here in town, VMO, the voice of Monroe County. And my broadcast partner, he became successful in life, Paul W. Smith, and I just kind of didn't. But
silly.
But went to the Monroe News, was there for quite some time, went to AAA Michigan, was the voice on the traffic copter for 3 years, flew over the city of Detroit, got shot at several times.
No.
Yeah, that was a real adventure. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the traffic's really heavy, and so's the gunfire. And end up at Fermi for 22 years in the corporate communications department. And then the last 8 years, I guess it was, that I worked, I was with the Monroe Public Schools. And people will remember this. Good morning, Monroe Public Schools parents and staff. Due to snow overnight, there will be no school today for Monroe Public Schools, blah, blah, blah. These teachers used to call them Bob days. Yeah, I woke a lot of people up and told them, you can go back to sleep.
I love it. And you, so you made a lot of kids happy. A lot of kids were happy during that time.
Oh, yeah, and so were moms.
Yeah.
Until you had to call off school for like the fourth day, and then you kind of tested their patience.
Yep.
But I retired, and I've been doing something that a lot of people I think know me from. I announce professional sports and collegiate sports. I've been with the Detroit Tigers. I've been with the Detroit Lions. I've been with the University of Michigan, Wayne State University, the University of Toledo, Toledo Walleye, Toledo Mud Hens, Toledo Storm for 16 years. So, in fact, I've done 4,167 professional and collegiate sporting events.
Wow.
All that means is I like to see sports, and I don't mind eating pizza and hot dogs beforehand. When you work for the Ilitch family, you get a lot of pizza before baseball games.
I bet you would, huh?
What is
I
that
bet you
like?
would.
But
Just
Major
working
League Baseball?
just working for the Ilitch family, or
you didn't see them that often, although the championship ring that I wear from 2006 was actually put on my finger by Mike Ilitch himself, which was pretty cool. And then when I left the Tigers in 2018, I was living in Florida. A lot of people don't realize it. In 2017 and 2018, I was my mom's caregiver. So I lived in Florida, and I would drive back to Detroit every time the Tigers had a home series. And so that was 1,200 miles one way. I lived in Ida, so that was a 100-mile round trip to the ballpark and back every night. But I did that 32 times over the 2 years in 2017, 2018. But 2018, I decided, you know what, Mom had passed away. I'm going to retire. And then when I did, the last person I got to see, from the Tigers was actually Christopher Ilitch, who came down and thanked me personally. And that was very cool. I turn around and they say, "Hey, Bob, somebody's here to see you." And I thought, "Oh, geez, come on, I'm trying to get ready for a game." And I turn around, "Oh my gosh, it's Mr. Illich." He says, "Hey, we just want to thank you for being here and all this kind of stuff." And it was the Tigers treated me very, very nice. It was really nice, and I had a bunch of family and friends come down to my last game. There's probably like 100 and some folks who were there at the game, and I got to throw out a first pitch and all that kind of stuff. Kind of emotional. 1,200. I did 1,200 major league games, and that included 2 World Series. So, when I was there, I was very fortunate because I was there during arguably the best decade in Detroit Tiger history. I mean, we were always chosen to win the Central Division, went to 2 World Series. We went to the playoffs 7 times in the 15 years that I did the games.
So you would have called the 06 and the 13 World Series.
Actually,
then.
12.
12.
Yeah, I did.
We went to the 06 World
Well,
Series.
unfortunately,
we were actually both there and didn't know each other.
Yeah, really.
Went to a game in that
Well, I
series.
tell you, 06, the weather was horrible.
Yeah, it was.
I
so
tell you, I
cold.
have such. I'm so impressed by you guys. I'm sitting in the press box and freezing. But the
It
funny thing was,
cold.
I can tell this story now. For years and years and years, I've had problems with kidney stones. Just terrible problems with kidney stones. They are so blasted painful. And the first game of the 2006 World Series, I got to introduce on television the starting lineups. Up until that time, it was always Joe Buck or whoever was, doing it. But Joe had heard me do some games in 2006. He said, the local guy, let's try the local guy. So sure enough, I never heard it until I got to watch the tape later. But Joe Buck threw it to me, and here's the starting lineup for the St. Louis Cardinals. And I almost broke up during the lineup because I'm looking at they tell you don't look at the monitor. A guy will touch you on the right shoulder to go, and you know that you're supposed to start reading. He touches you on the left shoulder to stop. You have like a production guy behind you. Well, I just wanted to see what this looked like on TV. I know I'd get to hear it later. And I looked down and batting third, the designated hitter, number whatever, Albert Pujols. And I looked down, and Albert Pujols trips as he's coming up the steps. And I almost lost it on live national TV because Albert Pujols almost fell down.
Right, what a story.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, and the weather was terrible. It was terrible. But that night, I had a kidney stone attack, and I had painkillers that I could take, but I didn't want to sound like Harry Carey, from like the second inning on. So I waited to take them until like the 6th inning. I was in abject pain before getting there. But once it took it, it started feeling kind of good, in the 8th inning. But it didn't affect the way I sounded because I have a tape of the game. Well, a tape. I have a recording of the game, and you can't tell that I had taken a pill. But that was it was the second night that Kenny Rogers had something that they wondered what it was
on his hands or
on his hand. Yeah,
Yeah,
and,
I remember that whole thing.
yeah.
Yep. That's
And-
crazy. Some of the craziest moments of like watching sports, like you've been there, been a part of it.
Yeah.
To me, that's like, wow, man, I'm amazed to be honest.
Something funny is when I was younger in high school, you brought up Harry Carey and the traffic reporter. Okay.
Yeah.
So in one of my classes, me and my buddy, we had to come up with a radio station, and we did the traffic report from the helicopter. And
Oh yeah, and it really sounds like that when you're in there.
Who was in the helicopter? But Harry Carey, Will Ferrell's Harry Carey. So I'm over here, and wow, over here,
Harry
it was one of
Carey.
the funnest things. And now to look back at, like, I was doing everything we're doing now back in high school, and I didn't even correlate the beginning of to where we're at now.
I did a lot of announcing in high school, but I went to Ida High School, so we had no radio station, and there's no public address kind of stuff that I got to do. However, I played all the sport. Well, I played baseball. I never got a varsity letter at Ida. I was the first Vergiels and the only Vergiels in the history of Ida High School to not earn a varsity sports letter. And in summer baseball, I would sit on the bench and I would announce the games. Max Jobs looks in. He's got the sign from Jim Setzler. Here's the wind and the pitch. Swung on, miss. That'll be strike 2 now. 0-2 on the batter. So I did that. And there were times, I swear, that Mr. Thompson, Bob Thompson, and Ed Wiley, who were my coaches over the years that I played, I swear there were times they put me into the game just so they wouldn't have to listen to me on the bench announce the game. Because, and this is not scientific or anything, but when our dugout was on the first base side, I knew sometime that night I would get to play left field. And if our dugout was on the third base side, I knew I'd probably play first base or right field because that's as far as you can get. Every once in a while, they gave me center field too, especially if the wind was blowing out. But no, I used to do those games. And after I graduated from Ida, I went to a 2-week seminar at Eastern Michigan University. And 2 of my instructors were John Seidelman and Sam Eiler, who were the voice of Eastern Michigan football. And they were legendary voices, and they were my instructors. And they called the Monroe radio station because I wanted to get into radio. They called Ira C. Smith, who had just started at the Monroe radio station. Well, he was looking for local voices. Well, here's a guy grew up in Ida and liked sports. So sure enough, I went and had my interview with Ira and was able to do some sports and went from doing color commentary to play-by-play. That was kind of heady when you're 18 and you're actually broadcasting games on the radio with sponsors and all kinds of stuff. It's really, really pretty cool.
It sounds crazy enough like it started at your own games. You know what I mean? Like this whole thing began as if it's not going to work in this way, I'm going to make sports work in another way because I love sports.
My
that's
goal,
that's amazing.
Well, my goal always was to take Ernie Harwell's place. When I was a kid and Ernie Harwell was doing the games, I can remember telling my dad and a lot of people will say, yeah, they've heard me say it. I want to take Ernie Harwell's place. Well, sure enough, when the Tiger opening came in 2004, Mr. Harwell was still kind of with the Tigers, but he wasn't on the air regularly. And I'll never forget the very first time I saw, and I can't even call him Ernie Harwell. He's Mr. Harwell to me. And I saw him in the in the lunchroom before one of my early games in 2004 when the Tigers had purchased me. And I go, oh my gosh, I got to introduce myself to Ernie Harwell. Well, my dad, who also is Bobb Vergiels, always used to tell me that he would write to Ernie Harwell and Mr. Harwell would write him back. Oh yeah, sure, Dad. Yeah, okay, yeah, right. Dad never showed me the letters, so I didn't know. And so I go up and introduce myself to Mr. Harwell. He looks at me and says, Mr. Vergiels, you certainly are well preserved for someone who saw the 1927 Yankees play. And I go, oh my God, my dad must have been telling the truth because Dad used to talk about he saw the 1927 Yankees, to this day considered one of the greatest teams in the history of baseball, here almost 100 years later. And I thought, oh my gosh. Well, sure enough, when my mom moved to Florida after Dad had passed away, she gave me this big box of crap. There's a bunch of stamps. I'm a stamp collector. So there's a bunch of those. There's a bunch of letters. And oh my God, there's all my dad's letters to Ernie Harwell because he'd make a copy of them. And here's Mr. Harwell's letters to my dad. So Dad was telling the truth. It was kind of, yeah. Well, in 2005, the All-Star game was in Detroit. And since I was the home announcer, I got to announce the Major League Baseball All-Star game in 2005.
That had to be an experience.
Oh my gosh, it was. And ESPN, which was doing the games then, or doing that game particularly, brought Mr. Harwell back to do an inning on TV. Well, I introduced him to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, to announce the 6th inning of tonight's Major League Baseball All-Star game, let's welcome Detroit legend Ernie Harwell. And when I did that, all the fans, there's 45,000 fans in the ballpark. Everybody's up and cheering and raising all kinds of hell. And a funny thing happened. Aramis Ramirez, who at the time was a Chicago Cub, was stepping up to the plate to bat. But he noticed all the people are standing and cheering. And he stepped out of the box, put the bat down between his legs, and he started to clap. The next thing you know, the pitcher on the mound, put the glove under his arm, he starts to clap. All of the ball players on the field, they're starting to clap. Here come the benches. They're emptying. All the ball players are coming out of the dugouts to clap. And in my ear, the director saying, okay, introduce the batter. We got to get this GD game going. And I'm thinking, no, this is Mr. Harwell. This is a Detroit legend. Look at what's going on here. And I'm hearing, I told you, introduce the batter. We got to get going. Well, we got all these all-stars, a bunch of future Hall of Famers too, on the field, 45,000 people in the stand. Everybody in our press box is standing there cheering Mr. Harwell. I'm not starting the game until you can feel the cheering start to go down. And when I started to feel that, I said, I'm going to introduce the batter. This guy is screaming at me in my earpiece. Introduce the batter. So finally I did. We're cleaning up at the end of the game. And this guy comes by. I want to see the public address announcer. I mean, I didn't know who the guy was, but I could tell from his voice because I've been hearing that voice in my ear. And he says, you'll never work Major League Baseball again. Blah, blah. He's screaming at me. And I said, what's this all about? I told you to introduce. I said, hang on. I said, I don't know where you're going to be tomorrow, but I'm going to be here in Detroit doing a Detroit Tigers game. I said, you may not know what Ernie Harwell means to our people, but I do. I am not going to introduce that batter until I'm ready to do it. And he just went muttering away, cussing and everything. But one of my biggest honors was getting to introduce Mr. Harwell on the field for the very last time. When he knew he was dying, he wanted to come and talk to Tiger fans one last time. And so I got to introduce him, and he spoke not very long, 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, if that, but very eloquent, without notes. Just stepped to the microphone and said his piece. And the toughest thing I ever had to say at the end of his speech was, ladies and gentlemen, Tigers legend Ernie Harwell. And it was tough because I could hear grown men behind me crying. I didn't have my headset on because I just wanted to hear kind of the ambiance of what was going on. And that was so difficult to get through. And when Mitch Albom wrote the play, Ernie, it was really funny. The night before it was to debut at the theater, I was married to someone else at the time, and the phone rings, and my wife at the time said, someone who says they're Mitch Albom. I said, well, that's not a name you make up. Hand me the phone. And so, hey, Bob, Mitch Albom. And I knew who Mitch Albom was, because by that time I was also doing the Lions game. So I had seen him at the Lions games all the time. And he says, I got a big favor to ask. I said, what's that? He said, well, tomorrow's opening day. I said, yeah. He said, I need you to do some recording because we want to use your voice on Ernie. He said, just before the play starts, we have some, we want the ambiance. They had like crowd noises and things like that. He said, I want you to do some stuff like, no smoking and blah, blah, blah. All the things that you do. He says, the Tigers have approved it, which I later found out that they had. And they're sending some copy over. Could you stop at the WJR studios on your way to the ballpark and do this recording? Are you kidding me? Yeah. So I do the recording, and I get invited to the opening night of Ernie. Apparently they brought in some voice from California to do it. And when Mitch went and saw the place, when they were rehearsing, he said, no, No, that's not Detroit. That's not us. Let's bring the real guy in. So they brought me in. The night that we're, the premiere night, sure enough, got tickets, sitting right in front of the WJR group. And a guy by the name of Warren Pierce, who he's not on the radio anymore, but he was like a fill-in guy for WJR for years and years and years. He's sitting behind us. And I can tell who's sitting behind us because I recognize their voices. Paul W. Smith is back there, and Paul and I go back, even then it was 30 years. And so we said hi and everything. Warren Pierce has no idea I'm the guy sitting in front of him. So when the announcements come on, he goes, "Oh my God, we got to hit that guy again here tonight." and Smith just, he starts breaking up. So there was like a little intermission in the play a little bit later. He says, "Warren, I got to introduce you to a good friend of mine. This guy and I had known each other for years." He said, "This is Bobb Vergiels. He's the PA announcer for the Tigers." And you can see, Warren kind of get down in his chair.
Right. Sink a little bit.
Yeah. But the adventures I had with Ernie Harwell were, even to this day, I still remember those things just as if they, the games kind of all mesh together. I did 1,200 games. There are 39 million people at those games. But when you meet some of them, and like Mr. Kaline was the same way. I got to meet him a number of times, and periodically we'd have foul balls come up into the announcing booth where I was. Well, I spent all my effort getting the heck out of the way. This ball's coming at me 110 miles an hour. I have no ball glove. I'm getting out of the way. And Mr. Kaline would see me as I'm leaving, because we'd leave about the same time. And he'd say, "You kind of got to get behind those balls." No, I'm not going to do that. But when I was in Florida, he knew I was making the trip from Florida up to Detroit, and he started calling me the worldwide traveler. And because I was in Lakeland, lived just outside of Lakeland, Florida, a lot of times I go to Lakeland games and I'd see young Tigers and I'd see young other guys, the Braves, the Yankees. I saw a lot of their farm hands. And I would tell Mr. Kaline, because we always seemed to walk into the ballpark about the same time. For a 7:15 game, his limo would get there because they sent a car for him. His limo would get there about 5. I'd get there about 5. So many were the nights we'd walk in together. And I'd tell him, I saw such and such a player, and, boy, this guy really looked good and everything. He would say, "Yeah, he looks good, but he can't get around on a fastball, and he has trouble with curveballs down low in the zone." But I'm going, this is Al Kaline. How does he know all this stuff about these Class A minor league guys? But he was quite a guy. I was very sad when he passed away. Funny thing about Al Kaline, a lot of the broadcasters who would come in with their teams were former major league players who I got to know, because I was there for 15 years. So I got to know these guys. And one of my favorites was Ray Fosse, a guy who was with Cleveland. His career was pretty much ruined when Pete Rose ran over him at home plate in the All-Star game.
Okay. That's iconic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I still see the video and the pictures but I got to know Ray Fosse because he was one of the broadcasters with Oakland. Nice guy. And I'd always call him Ray, and he'd call me Bob. Sure enough, one night I'm walking over to my booth, and here comes Mr. Kaline, and here comes Ray Fosse. I said, "Hey, Ray, I'm Mr. Kaline." And Fosse says, "Well, hang on a second. Why am I Ray and he's Mr. Kaline?" And without missing a beat, Al Kaline says 3 letters, HOF. Hall of Fame. But it was so great to get to meet those guys, and Willie Horton. Really like Mr. Horton. Used to see him in Florida all the time because he had a foundation down there, and I did some work for his foundation down in Florida when I lived down there. When these guys are just walking around a press box, and I'll be honest with you, I was kind of starstruck. A Tiger fan, I saw my first game in September 1960. So I saw K-Line play, saw Mr. Horton play. I saw all these guys play, listened to Mr. Harwell on the radio. And then, of course, you get to see some of the old broadcasters come through. Ray Lane every once in a while would come in. Paul Carey. I just love Paul Carey. And you still had that big, well, Mr. Vergiels, it's really nice to meet you. You know? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And so many nights I'd go to bed just listening to those guys. You know, they'd be doing a game, the Tigers and the Angels or Tigers in Seattle, and they wouldn't even come on till 10 o'clock at night, but I'd be listening to them. And to be able to see them and to rub shoulders with them. And do you know what it's like when Al Kaline calls you Bob? You know,
it's so you and I giggle because it is funny, but it's also like that's true stuff right there. Like that's very real what you're saying. Like you get called somebody. So like I met Jim Harbaugh this past year, right before he, and just to shake his hand and kind of get to talk to him for a while.
Yeah.
And, like stuff like that.
He still calls you, hey, dude, hey, guy.
Oh, yeah. He's not going to call me, Coach K, but but still. So what I try to teach the kids and what my message is for like any, because we have kids who watch our podcast and whatnot, too, younger generation is like, I always think no matter where you're at in sports, one of the best things about sports outside of the experience is just the people you meet. Sports, no matter what facet you do it in, whether you play, coach, announce, analyze it, whatever you're doing, it just, even officiating, it's just going to take you to a place, right, where you get to meet so many people if you keep going.
And you are somebody's hero. I always tell young announcers that I can swear to you that not one person, unless your mom and dad are at the ball game, not one person paid money to hear you, but you are part of that environment and you are somebody's hero. And I don't care if you don't feel good. I don't care if you had a bad day at work. I don't care if you had a fight with your wife. When you walk by that fan and that fan says, can I get a picture with you? Would you sign this for? By God, that answer is yes. And I'm going to talk to, if you got kids that are watching, if you go up and ask someone for an autograph, please say please.
Please say please.
Say thank you.
Yeah.
You just don't know. The person who you're asking might have had a bad day, might really have to get to the car, that kind of stuff. Just I'll sign. And in fact, this past weekend, we had Toledo Storm weekend.
Yeah.
And we honored the teams from 30 years ago. And I was part of that. And in fact, a couple of people pointed out, you're the only active one still left from there, which is not quite true because the official scorer and the penalty timekeeper and those guys are still there. But I'm probably the most visible evidence of, 30 years ago. And oh my gosh, pictures, autographs, people wanted to sit and talk and what was my favorite time with the Storm and all. And you better take time with everybody. I mean, they're paying their money, even the cheap seats, 20 some bucks.
Yep.
Right.
They're paying money. You are part of their environment. They're part of the experience.
You guys,
that's true because what my experience was growing up. He shoots, he scores.
Yes.
That was part of the game.
Detroit basketball.
Oh, yeah. He's and
Mason, right? Wasn't
yeah?
that?
Oh, John Mason. You get something that you're known for, like in Toledo. I'm Toledo Storm. Yeah. Oh, I had people come up to me this past week. Oh, it was so great to hear Toledo Storm.
You guys make the experience, like you said, you're part of the experience. You guys make it better, or if you're really good at what you do. Yeah, you guys for sure make it a lot because the Pistons one came to my mind right away. I used to love going to the Pistons games and hearing Mason yell.
Oh yeah, he gets a whole crowd doing it.
I loved it. And even so if you go to a Michigan hockey game, one thing I love about Michigan hockey is they're super engaging.
Oh yeah,
the announcers engage the crowd the entire time, and it's awesome to go.
Do they still come out? And when the opposing team comes out, everybody's got a newspaper.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Yes, and they all cover.
Yeah, a couple times they had me come in.
As of about a handful of years ago, I haven't been in a while.
Okay, well they had me come in to do special, stuff between periods and stuff like that. we had a dog race on ice, and I said, don't you guys ever ask me to come back to do that? The one dog's pooping on the ice and all kinds of stuff. Didn't run. It had the runs, but it wouldn't run. And I said, man, I'm never doing this again. But when I was there and the opposing team came out, it was Michigan State. When the Spartans came out, everybody in the crowd opens up a newspaper.
They're ruthless in Ann Arbor.
Oh my
With their
gosh.
hockey, they're ruthless.
Oh yeah.
I love the hockey culture. I really do.
So that was, I wanted to kind of
it's
transition
rare.
and ask him about that, because we've been talking about the baseball, and I love Tigers baseball. Grew up, so we were just to kind of wrap my point up. We were talking about how announcers make the games better. And my grandfather, we grew up under that, like not just the Pistons, but Tigers, Michigan. Like we had a certain level of love and respect for, like, hey, we like the band, we like the announcers, we like everything that goes into whatever the event is. But you guys definitely had that place. But I do want to ask you, like, because I grew up a diehard Storm fan. Love the Storm, still love the Walleye. Went a couple weeks ago. So how long have you been doing that, and are you still doing the Walleye?
Yes. I started with a Storm. I went 1991 plus 16 years, did all 16 years. Actually, when the team went out of business, I figured they wouldn't ask me back, because Joe Napoli at the time said, well, we're going to just totally cut ties with the Storm. And so it'll be all new people and stuff like that. So I was really surprised when, they called me like 3 weeks before the very first Walleye season. And what was that, 2008 or whatever it was.
You've been doing the Walleye for a while.
Well, I did them for 4 years because I wanted to get 20 years in.
Okay.
And then I said, you know what? I'm doing Tiger games. I'm doing Michigan games. I'm doing Detroit Lions games. I'm just going to walk away from the Walleye. And a guy by the name of Anthony Bellino is a good friend of mine. Every time I'd go someplace, I'd hand the reins off to him. And, oh, man, he's super. I mean, he's the in-game hostess now for the Lions. And now he's can I say it, a radio station? He's on WJR now with Lomas Brown. I don't envy him when they start to talk about baseball, because Lomas knows nothing except football. But that might be kind of hard to pull a 400-pound guy along with you when he doesn't know anything about the sport you're talking about. But anyway, I left, and then Bellino kind of got big. He got, like I say, he got my gigs. He got the ones at Michigan and that kind of stuff, and starting to get more popular, and had a radio show now and all that stuff. So he decided he didn't want to come back. Well, 3 years ago, Neil Newcomb, who's the general manager of the Walleye, calls me and says, I'm sure you're going to tell me no, but what do you think about coming back and doing our games? I said, I'd never say no to that. And so sure enough, they were shut down for 2 years because of COVID. There was no Walleye hockey for 2 years because of COVID. The year they came back, Bellino did the first game because he wanted to say goodbye to everybody, and I totally understand. Then he introduced me, and I've been doing those games ever since. So I'm in my third season. I really want to get at least 2 more years in, because that'll be 25 years of hockey in Toledo.
That's awesome. Toledo hockey has a rich tradition, man. I was so heartbroken when the Storm and before we knew the Walleye were coming and everything, I was in the sports arena, because I grew up in the sports arena.
I love that place.
It was the greatest, man.
It was a dump, but it was our dump.
There, right? Exactly. First hockey game. It was an amazing place.
Yeah.
I just went to a Walleye game about a week ago, so I didn't even know, man. To be honest, that's
personally,
awesome.
I grew up watching the Red Wings, right?
Yep.
Love diehard Red Wings fan, but I think I like Walleye games better. Especially now, because it's everything I love in hockey. You got scoring, you got hits, and you got fights.
Oh yeah.
And that is old time hockey at its finest. Yep. And that is what hockey is.
And you can bring the kids, because we have mascots and we have little games that we play.
Bad seat.
No, it's beautiful arena.
So my daughter's 10, and we are looking, because like she wants to go to a Michigan football game. But I know her personality. And I know that a Michigan football game, them seats are real tight. Things aren't necessarily as fun for a kid at a Michigan football game. But when we went to the Walleye game, my wife and I, a few weeks ago, I was like, you know what? Let's take her to one of these first because there's a lot here for kids. Let's see how she handles this, because I think she'd do really well at a Walleye game, and I think she'd love it. I think it's a great place to take your family.
Tickets are still available for February 9th. That's the night they're giving away my bobblehead.
He was telling me this, and I was like, you know what? I think we're gonna have to do that.
I was gonna say, you've pretty much go get me a cemented yourself into the culture. You get your own bobble night.
Yeah,
hey, you're official, man. When you get your own bobblehead night, that means you're like, that's like better than the blue check mark on, that like means you're official.
Yeah.
Like that. No, that is a super awesome thing though.
Fact, my wife and I went down to Toledo yesterday, and I taped some commercials for the upcoming thing. And I got to see, I hate to call him Little Bobby because that sounds bad, but I got to see the bobblehead for the first time. And it's really kind of cool. And it even talks. It even talks. It says, and I'm your rink announcer, Bobb Vergiels. There's a little button, and you punch the button.
That is cool.
That's pretty awesome. I got a friend that plays for the Walleye too, so I'm gonna between I
bet it's Jake Willits.
Jake Willits. He's been on our Sunday show, on our coaching show. But yeah, Jake's a great guy. I grew up with him. So
the funny thing is, and I kept trying to get both of them on, because I have a show too. It's called Bobbing Around Monroe. Can I talk about my radio show? And I've been wanting to get both he and Colin. What is Colin's last name? Oh my God. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name.
He's from this area though.
They both played at Catholic Central.
Right.
They played hockey at Catholic Central. And it's the very first time in, I almost had the name. I'll get it before the story's done. But it's the very first time that two athletes from a Monroe County school have gone and played a professional sport and played on the same team at the same time. Colin Tyson.
Shout out to those guys, because that's incredible.
Yeah, now he's not with the team right now. He got called back up. He's playing in Tucson right now. Because that's in the American Hockey League. So he's making a few extra coins every game. But when he does get sent down to the ECHL, he doesn't get sent to the team that's affiliated with Tucson. They send him to Toledo. And why not? His family's here, and I know they all show up at the games and stuff like that. So, but to have two athletes from a Monroe County school playing together, it was very cool.
It's very cool. So I just found a secret out of coaches right before you got here. I found he's a stamp collector, and so are you, right?
I am.
How do you get into collecting stamps? How does that?
Mine's hereditary.
Yeah,
mine as well.
Yeah, in fact, my goal, and I'll be kind of old by the time I go. Oh, hell, I'm old now, but I want to live at least till 2027, because my dad started his stamp collection in 1927.
Okay.
And when Dad passed away, he willed me his collection, and I was already collecting. But that will mean that the stamp collection is in our family for a century. How cool would that be?
Very cool.
But I'm even, in fact, tonight, after we get home, after we're doing this interview, I'll turn the TV on and I'll get a lap board, get on an album, and start putting some stamps in. And if someone calls me and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" Well, I'm in Guatemala right now. What do you mean you're in Guatemala? Well, actually, I'm working with my Guatemala stamps, or Hong Kong or something like that. But I have, I had to do some quick math on it. I have over 500,000 stamps and albums. Wow. In fact, tomorrow night, I don't know when this plays, if it's
right now.
Okay. Well, tomorrow night, for the very first time, I'll be selling some of my stamps in an auction. You get as many stamps as I have, you get a lot of duplicates and stuff like that. So a friend of mine from the Toledo Stamp Club said, "Hey, why don't you sell some of your duplicates? What do you use with?" Well, what I would do with them is, somebody would have a birthday, and I would take these stamps. Say somebody's turning 50. So I go through my stamps, and I'd get several stamps where the face values add up to 50. And so I would send them a birthday card, and I say happy blank birthday, and I'd put, you could fill in the blank by adding up the face values on these stamps. And people think, oh my God, you get a birthday card, you just pitch it. They don't pitch those. And I also try not to use regular postage stamps. I have so many stamps that you can use for postage that are 3 cents, 4 cents, 20 cents. You just add them up, and put them on an envelope. Now, when I send them a birthday card, they don't they don't throw the envelope away either. But stamps are so interesting. I don't travel much, or I did when I was with DTE, but I don't travel to other countries or anything. I don't really care to do that much. I mean, we go periodically on vacations, but I've been to every country in the world. And my wife is Filipina. And when we first started dating, she was just blown away that I could name about a dozen Filipino presidents. I knew the capital of the Philippines. I knew all this stuff from my stamp collection.
I got to say this real quick. Speaking of your wife, I got to come to your 70th birthday party, and nobody parties like the Philippines.
Oh, you are not kidding. You are not kidding.
Oh man, that was the best time ever. I've never seen anybody party like that.
The disc jockey starts the song and the dance floor is full.
They were bringing out big bob heads.
I love it.
They were singing and dancing. It was cool. It was it really was one of the coolest birthday parties that I've ever been to. I appreciate the invite.
They really well, when we got married at Comerica Park. And well, you don't get married there unless you got a few coins you just don't know what to do with. But it was really great, and it was a party. The minute the disc jockey started the first record, that shows how old I am. He started the first song. It was unbelievable. That dance floor never emptied all night long.
And the food was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
On a whole nother level. I ate foods there that I never tasted before. They had a whole pig head on the table.
It's called LaShawn.
There were these little egg roll things that,
all handmade too, by the way.
Everything was homemade.
Everything was handmade.
These dudes are like hardcore food guys too. So I know these guys.
That's why we travel.
These dudes love food.
We went to the Christmas party. Yeah. And Gloria brought some egg rolls, and she didn't even have them set down yet, and Ryan's starting to go through them.
So here's the deal with those. Okay, so I thought they were taquitos. So at first I'm like, no way, I'm not touching those. And my daughter had grabbed one and was full, and I was like, okay, I'll try. I said, oh my God, these aren't taquitos. I ran over to that table. I got about 3 more. Those things were so good.
Yeah.
They were very good. I don't know what was in them, but I could have ate a whole plate of those. And
she spends hours putting together stuff like that. My family will come over for birthdays or Christmas or whatever. And oh my gosh, Gloria, my wife, will start cooking like the night before, and the house just absolutely smells fantastic.
It's pretty awesome. Hungry at all times after that, but probably smells incredible.
Is there any types of like soups from that region? I know like Vietnam has pho, and I absolutely love pho. That's one of my favorite soups of life.
Yeah, there's she makes soup for me for lunches all the time, and a lot of it is just okay, here's what we got left from last night, and here's what we got from a couple nights ago, and look what I found in the freezer. And she'll put it together, and oh my gosh, I'll be out in the living room doing whatever I'm doing, and the smell is just amazing. And I love soup, and it's just one of those things where here's what she had, and she put it together. And I don't even know if there's got names on them, but
they're delicious.
Oh my gosh. There's only one thing that I don't eat of from the Philippines, and that's like the way they do fish. That's tough for me. Whole fish.
Yeah.
Whole fish. That's a little difficult for me. But anything else, oh my gosh, it's just pure heaven. It really is. It truly is.
I'm gonna shift gears real
Yeah.
quick. I think you're involved with the beauty queens or the. I know I butchered it. That's not what they're called.
Miss Monroe County
there you go.
Scholarship Program.
Yes,
I've been involved in they're associated with the Miss America
Miss
program.
America. That's pageant.
Yeah, I've been involved since 1989, actually 1990. My first Miss Monroe County I worked with as an interview coach was Molly McIntyre. And Molly had, now this was after Kaylani had won. Okay. So Monroe was really big into pageants. I mean, well, I don't know if you remember the St. Mary Academy Auditorium, but we used to have the pageant there, and we'd have to oversell it by 50 or 60 people because we get so many people showing up. It was unbelievable. But one of the Miss Monroe counties after Kaylani complained in the newspaper that, oh, nobody's giving me any attention because it's all Kaylani's year, blah, blah, blah. Well, she didn't realize, you say something to a newspaper reporter, it's on the record. Yeah. And you likely are going to read it. And so I had been trained by Detroit Edison at the time on what they call adversarial communication. Well, when I saw what had happened, I knew exactly what had happened. This poor young gal, 19 years old, didn't realize you shouldn't say something to the reporter that you don't want to read. So I called Diane Gruber, who's now one of my most dear friends, and she was the director of the pageant at the time. And I said, listen, I've been trained in how to do adversarial interviews. Well, Detroit Edison used to send me to Canada to represent Fermi. I used to have this Jesus feeling, on Good Friday. So I said to Diane, it's probably too late for who you have as queen now. However, if you would like, I will work with whoever wins and we'll work on interview. And originally I was supposed to just do it 5 or 6 times. And well, sure enough, Margaret, Jan, Molly McIntyre won. So they introduced Molly and I, and we worked together 5 or 6 times, and by October we were done. Come May, her dad, Bill McIntyre, calls me. Molly's getting ready to go to Muskegon. She really feels comfortable working with you. Would you, can you do some more interview practice? So sure enough, I was there like 3 nights a week. It was a lot of time. And a funny thing happened. She won. She became Miss Michigan. And before that time, nobody had an interview coach. But I tell you what, that next year, after she made a big to-do about the fact I had an interview coach, that next year, everybody showed up at the pageant with an interview coach. And when your first girl you work with wins, you're in. They don't let you leave that castle. So I was there for a long time. And Reese Johnson, who is the reigning Miss Monroe County, she and I are going to work together pretty soon. It's really difficult. I'm really busy with my appearance schedule and stuff. And with hers, it's really difficult to get together. But we'll probably work 10 or 15 times before she goes to Muskegon. And the young lady we had before her, Peyton, I just loved her. We just clicked. She still calls me her bestie. And she was our first Black Miss Monroe County. And I'm really big into Motown music. In fact, one of the shows I do is all Motown music. And so when she and I would go to appearances, she had no problem with me putting on, I had my show on thumb drives. So I'd put the show in and we'd sing to each other these old Motown songs as we're going to wherever we're going. So and I will be back this August to MC the pageant. They brought me back last August. I figured, well, you know what? This is the last time. I'm getting older. I haven't emceed the pageant in about 20 years. I just know this is my last time. I'm just going to throw it all against the wall, leave it all out there. And it turned out to be a really good show. So much so that the board met the next day and voted to ask me back the next year.
Yeah.
So I will be when Reese gives up her title, and that'll be third Saturday in August. Well, it's not the weekend after the county fair, but it's always 2 weekends after the county fair. Which, by the way, I'm not associated with the county fair, but don't we have a great county fair?
We do.
It's
Facts.
unbelievable.
We have a lot of great things that people just take for
It's-
granted.
It's
and
funny that people shit talk the fair to me. Super funny.
We have a great fair.
It's hilarious
Yeah.
when people say negative things. about
Oh,
the fair.
exactly.
I find it so funny because I'm like, well, drive around any other freaking
Go
town
to
in
Wayne
Michigan
County's
and they
fair.
don't have a damn fair like we do. So
Yeah, go to the Wayne County Fair. It's like going to the Podunk homecoming. You know,
he's right though. It's nothing like our fair, man. Like
Oh.
you go to any Lucas County. I've been to fairs, not a bunch, but 4 or 5 of them, and like none of them are even close to ours. I'm like, how do y'all hate this? There's literally something to do different every day. There's 700 food items that are all delicious.
Yeah.
All of them, like pick one, they're all gonna be good as hell.
and they're all 500 feet away from each other. So
Yeah, you don't gotta go nowhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, dude, you can get all the sweets and lemonade, shake ups, and your kid can go play. Like, there's literally nothing to not like about our fair.
Yeah.
Man.
I agree.
I find it like super
All the
funny.
extras, the derby and the protractor
Yeah.
poles.
4-H and
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
people's artwork get put on display. Like, it's just real. That one's real goofy
There's
to me
something
because
for everyone.
he's right. There's a lot of haters about our fair. Yet the funny part is, most of them still go.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm like, you hate it, but you still gonna walk around and go spend your time. at
No,
the
those
fair,
types
so.
of people will complain about
Every.
Oh yeah. You can give them $1 million. You can give them $1 million bucks and they'll bitch because it's wrinkled and green. know,
yeah,
What a point.
yeah. So go ahead, coach. My
just had a-
my
I just-
brain just went foggy.
Because to me, man, you're super multifaceted, right? Been involved in a lot of stuff, and tell us a little bit more about the like the bobbing around Monroe and kind of
There
that
you go.
side of things with what you're doing.
The Monroe County Radio had come to me when they knew I was coming back, and it was in 2020. Right at I drove in from Florida. I moved back here in March of 2020, and I was hearing on the radio all the way I'm driving up from Florida that Governor Whitmer is going to slam the gates shut at the state line. I'm thinking, oh God, now what do I do? Everything I own is in the back of this gosh darn U-Haul truck. But luckily, I knew all the back roads of Monroe County because I was a reporter, not because
weird time back then.
But Michelle Pallad from Monroe County Radio had said, hey, "Listen, you know everybody in town, and you're coming back to town. We'd like to have this show, and we'd like you to interview like people you used to cover as a reporter." Well, that's fun, to do that. But there's so much cool stuff going on now that, I try to have old cops, old mayors, old judges, old, prosecutors. I try to have those folks, but I also try to have people who are now in Monroe County. And the show started out as a 15-minute show, and it got so popular that Ralph Mahalik from Monroe Dodge said, "You know what? I want this show to be longer." So he bought 15 minutes of it. So it could go longer.
That's awesome.
And I've been really fortunate that Todd Jones at Jones for Men has stayed with me from the beginning. But I really enjoy it. I only write down 2 or 3 questions, and then I let the interview go where the interview is going to go. And it's interesting. The one that'll be on this Sunday, my daughter always wanted to interview me. So she came down, and the one that airs this Sunday is my daughter interviewing me. Yeah,
I will definitely watch that.
yeah,
'Cause that's awesome.
12:30. It's on, and she asked some tough questions. I mean, she knows the Bobb Vergiels that people don't know.
She can probably actually come up with the best questions.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, for him.
Oh, I was walking on eggshells the whole interview. Oh, I hope she doesn't answer that or ask that. But I like that show. That's a lot of fun. And then my Motown show that I have on Rewind 94.3. I've been wanting to do that for a long time. In fact, Millward and I talked about me doing it from Florida when I lived there, and it just didn't work out. So when I got back, I said, okay, let's try this. And that's an hour show. every Tuesday night, every Sunday night. Tuesday night is new and Sunday repeats. And I've had so much fun doing that show. And the fun part is the research. A lot of people don't realize, because they said, what's a white guy doing playing Motown music? I said, but that was music for young America. That was everybody's music. And a lot of people forget, I'm almost 72 years old. I played a lot of that stuff when it was new.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's one of the nice things about having started on the radio 53 years ago. Actually almost 54 now. I got to play the cool stuff on the radio.
I'd have to say, yeah. I'd have to say that was the cool stuff.
Oh,
I agree
man.
with you.
Music was so good back then.
So
We used to go to concerts too. Oh, man. Jay Giles was the best ever.
you say you got that job because you knew everybody in town, right?
Right.
And it says here in these notes, these beautiful notes you gave us, you were once called the most well-known guy in Monroe who never ran for office, right?
That
Coach.
is true.
So my question when I first read this
Knock the
was
home run out.
why not?
Why not run?
Yeah, why not? Because I think you
Actually, over the years, I've been asked by both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party to run for
Really?
various things. And I thought, you know what? I'm doing it right. If both parties think I'm one of theirs and they don't think I'm somebody else's, that was years ago. But I never ran. I used to do political consulting, and the same things that I got taught at Detroit Edison, you can teach to candidates. And I've only had one candidate who I represented who lost, and I really think he lost because he didn't listen to one of the things I said. Was he got beat in a primary, which he was really the odds-on favorite to get to the general election. But he didn't buy an address list that I thought he should have bought. He said, I'll get it for the general election. I said, that's not guaranteed. And it's really kind of nice to be in the background and to, if you have someone who wants to run and they need your expertise, I'm honored when someone comes and asks.
So if I wanted to run in the future, I could come to you.
Sure. I haven't said yes to anybody in a long time. I'm older. I'm not so sure I'm in the mainstream anymore, but there's certain things politically that you do that you always do. So, you go into a speech or whatever, and you know what you're going to say. Doesn't matter what they're going to ask you. Here's what you're going to say. And I was taught how to do that in adversarial communications.
Do you think it would be hard for somebody? Because for me, I feel like the reason, like I've actually always wanted to get into politics, but the reason I don't is because I feel like I'm surrounded by a lot of light right now. As far as like when you're in sports, it's negative. Sometimes you lose, you got your moments, your heart to hearts and all that sort of stuff, but it's a lot more positive than it is negative, right? And I feel like the minute I step into that field, it's a whole lot more negative than there is positive. So for people that grew up in sports, for me, it's almost like, I don't know if you feel the same. I guess it's kind of what I'm asking, right? Is like, for me, I couldn't step into something that's darker than what this is, because this is very light.
One of the things about politics, I like to be liked by people. And the minute you declare that you're running for something, now the city of Monroe is a little different because it's nonpartisan. If you run for city council, it's nonpartisan. But if you have a Republican or a Democrat, by golly, they're letting everybody know, even though they're running nonpartisan, I'm out of the Democratic Party or I'm out of the Republican Party. And the minute you say that you're going to run for something and you declare your party, half the people don't like you.
Especially today. It's an immediate
And they don't even
hatred
know why.
now.
They don't know why. Oh, they say, well, it's funny. I've noticed over the years, I used to cover elections in Monroe County when I was with the Monroe Evening News. I was there from 1974 to 1984. And in 74, 76, 78, 80, those elections, if you were a Republican, I don't care what you're running for, dog catcher, you weren't going to win. You were not going to win. This was a Democratic county. And I don't know when the shift started. I don't know who kind of was the first big Republican to break through. Maybe it was Dale Zorn. I don't know. But Now, if you look, the Democratic Party is the one that's not represented as much as the Republican Party.
You know what's funny about what you said too, and I was thinking about this, how you said both parties approached you and you think you're doing something right. I heard something on a podcast the other day. It was the dude who does this podcast with Logan Paul. He came on PBD, and Patrick Batt
The
said,
guy that left Logan Paul.
"No, this not George. This
Okay.
was Mahalik or whatever his last name is." But he said, so basically, if you look at Republicans or Democrats and you say, well, how many policies make up the Republican Party or the Democrat? Thousands, right?
Yeah.
So you're telling me that as a human being, you look at every single policy in one of these parties and say, yes, I fully agree with everything. There's no way.
There's no way.
So when I heard that the other day, and then you just said that, I'm like, this is how you know somebody who's doing it right, because they're literally, you can't identify them with something because they can't identify with all 1,000 ways of. That's why I never identify as one or the other, because I'm like, look, man, there's some things that this side does right, but there's other things that I'm like, oh, what the hell are you guys doing?
Exactly.
I'm more, I hate to say this because people get offended, but I'm more like a common sense guy, right? Like, let's just think policy with common sense.
But common sense is not common.
Not anymore.
Well, and a lot of the times nowadays, these policies you talk about aren't for the benefit
Growth.
of us.
Yep.
No longer is it that way, and I don't really want
Both
to get into
sides.
that a whole lot right now.
No, and both sides have that.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
But I'm still a political junkie. I read everything I can politically, and I think I'm one of the few people who watches Fox and
CNN.
And as a former reporter, this just blows my mind. They can both look at something and report on it, and I'll go, well, hang on a second. That's diametrically opposed to, and when I was a reporter, you cover something that happened. I mean, you did it, you covered it in person. And there's one way to cover it. The car went off the right side of the road, hit a tree. There's no interpretation to that. And then I'm looking at some of the stuff now, even like if there's some shootings that they cover. Well, they might cover it one way on Fox and totally differently on CNN. I go, how can you do that? 4 people got shot. That's the story.
This is just my opinion, and I love to hear from somebody like you, especially if you have pushback. I think news is gone in about 10 years because I think podcasts and things like Joe Rogan and things like even like radio shows like you're doing, I think eventually people are going to get so sick and tired of what you just talked about that they're going to start reaching to PBD, Joe Rogan.
We're seeing it with newspapers.
What's his name that just went to X that everybody watches now that left Fox?
Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson.
The thing is, these we'll call it the mainstream media places like you've named, they've literally been caught lying, not just fibbing and fabricating,
but don't apologize,
completely making stories up. So how are we as a people supposed to believe this?
And but the thing is, to me, they don't ever walk it back and even come out and be like, look you know what, we did lie to y'all.
Down.
I'm sorry. They literally double it down like you guys are stupid, so I'm going to double this down on you.
Well, look at Fox, the lawsuit that the election machine. I mean, you can tell me what you want, but that cost Tucker Carlson his job.
It did. No, that
because
sure
everybody said, "Oh no, we're just going a different way." And all that's BS. This guy was the most popular guy on TV.
Follow the money,
and you fired him.
Yeah, follow the money,
and then he got bigger.
Why Fox got smaller?
Yeah.
That's why I think news, though, because they're allowing all that to happen, and I think once you get people like Tucker that step out and start making a big name, and they don't need you anymore, and Elon's giving them this platform, and it's we had Broast Farms on last week, and we were talking about the farming industry and food and the real stuff, and it's just like once that information about whatever we're talking about keeps continuing to get out, I feel like news is just gonna go because eventually it's just gonna people are gonna give up on it.
We're seeing it with newspapers. I mean, the Monroe News. Do you know that there's 2 reporters that they have on that newspaper now, and one of them is a freelancer. Now I know that they want to they want to bring more people on because I've talked to some people who work there. But when I was there were 17 reporters plus 3 guys doing sports. And I didn't even count the ones who did the obituaries, the ones who used to do the clubs and all that kind of stuff. 17 people, and now you're down to 2. And the thing that scares me is the stuff that we used to catch. I mean, in my career as 10 years as a newspaper reporter, I got rid of 4 public officials with my stories because they were corrupt.
Damn.
That's not going to happen now. It's not going to happen now.
No,
because they're not going to hire someone like me.
No,
well, and they're not, you know,
because
they don't cover meetings that are like the county board meeting. When's the last time you read something in the newspaper about the county board? They still have somebody at the city council periodically. Now with sports, they still do a pretty good job of covering sports. It's only a day later.
They do, but they're in trouble with that now too, because the sports network, Monroe County Sports Network, shout out,
the issue
is starting to catch games live. They're starting to do things that, not saying they don't
come and do my airport games.
They do a great job. Monroe News does. I even get my student athlete of the week information for my show and everything from them. I go on there, I find their information. Like, they do a good job with sports, but
but as one who worked there, it really hurts me to see what it has become. Like I say, I myself used to write almost a half a page of newspaper copy every day in the morning.
So my opinion on the matter is they haven't evolved when they should have. They should be doing more video stuff.
Yeah.
They should. We want more than just reading it. Today's society barely reads.
They won't read.
We'll
as many
listen
articles.
to it or watch it
Or-
more than we read.
Or put a link in that story. Put a link, click on it, and it takes you to the video. It takes you to the interview that
my other issue with them has been this too, and I feel like they only cover community events of the select handful of businesses or people that they are kind of in a circle with, I guess, or friends with, or I don't know what.
Let me push back a little bit on that.
Yeah,
because I there are certain people. When I was at Monroe Public Schools, I was the communication guy there for almost 8 years. And part of what I did was I averaged 6 news releases a week in the years I was there. I only worked 5 days a week, but we had 6 news, an average of 6 a week. You know that I got about 80% of the stuff that I wrote in the paper. And it's not that the paper was, in favor of the Monroe Public Schools or anything like that, but we were getting it to them. And I'm still seeing the stuff I'm seeing in there now is because the people are getting it to them. And it's there are certain groups, and I know because I've had some of those people on my radio show because they call me. They want to be on the radio show. Well, I also see them in the newspaper. So I know that they're aggressive coming after trying to get this space with me. They try to get the airtime.
That's real.
That. And when you look at the schools now, Monroe Public Schools has a communications person. I was the first one in the county, believe it or not. And then everybody kind of thought, wow, we should probably get one. Bedford's got a halftime one. Airport's got an excellent one. Monroe's is very good too. And the Catholic schools have somebody as well. So you need somebody to kind of help the newspaper, and I would write stuff. I would write stuff in such a way that of course I'd worked there. So I knew kind of what they were looking for and the kind of form that they wanted. So I would write it as if it was in the paper. And so all they had to do was pick it up. Oh, by golly, and all they would edit it and say, according to a news release from Monroe Public Schools, and that's all they would change it. And so a little bit of a trick there if you're watching at home and want to get your stuff in the paper.
That definitely makes sense. Yeah.
You hear that all the time too. Train like you're there, not like you want to be there.
Right. Yep.
Right.
If they tell you, if you're trying to make $1 million, you act like you're a millionaire. You
Yeah,
move
yeah.
like that.
Mhm.
That's
Well, Bob, unfortunately, we're coming short on time.
Okay.
And is there anything else you wanna say or talk about real quick before we wrap it up?
The only thing I want to say is I do consider myself to be the luckiest man I've ever met. Uh, to be able to have done what I did in my career so far, and I'm still doing it. I'm almost 72 years old, and I still have. Well, I've already got another 60 some games that I'm booked to do, and I don't even have my mud hen schedule yet. So uh, I'm very fortunate that way to be able to do what you want to do. I'm I'm supposedly retired, but the lady at the bank said, you know, you're retired in name only, but you have to keep yourself busy because you want yourself to be vital. You know, the last thing you want to find is that you don't matter to anybody, and you still want to matter. And I'm pretty fortunate in that I have ways that I can get I can entertain with my Motown show, but I can inform with my bobbing show. So that makes me pretty lucky. It really does.
Sure
And I
does.
really thank you guys for
love
having
that.
me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. If you guys don't mind too, we'll have to schedule them for a Sunday episode. We can,
Coach
kicking
Coach
it
does
with.
his own show on
So
Sunday.
we have our own sports coaching related show, and maybe when this spring or something, when baseball is coming up, or when you got a free minute, we can.
I
talk
used to
some
coach.
sports and-
I used to coach women's softball in Monroe.
Okay.
It used to be really, really big. I mean, softball itself in Monroe used to be super huge. I mean, Munson Park and Heck Park and Carnes Field and Rossler Field. Every night there were 3 and 4 and 5 games on each field. And I coached the Monroe Evening News team in 1977, 8, and 9. Is that what it was? It was back
as a kid.
it was a
the
long time
90s.
ago. Back when we used to play at Rossler Field. I used to love Rossler Field because they had these great big stands and you were like in a pit. And it really and then when I moved to Florida, I had only lived in Florida for about 3 days before there's a knock on my door and there's like 6 or 8 women standing there. Oh, this is kind of cool. And they said, we understand from talking to your mom, because I moved down to Florida to take care of my mom, that you coach women's softball. I said, yeah, I have for a long time. And they said, well, would you coach us?
That's awesome.
I said, there's a team here? Oh, yeah, there's a team. Well, they didn't tell me that it was a terrible team. And we went 0-18. And this was a team that was my first year. We were 0-18. This was a team that thought it was a moral victory if we scored.
Oh, been there.
Yeah. Yeah. So
a soccer team like that in high school.
But then I thought to myself, you know what? Just because they don't have the talent doesn't mean that we can't go over the fundamentals and get the most mileage out of everybody. And near the end of the season, we were darn near beating teams. We were getting beat, but we weren't getting mercied. And I always said, you know what? I said, we judge ourselves by if we get to bat in the 7th inning. If we can get to the 7th inning and we're still playing ball, you've played a good game. The next year, we were 10-8 with the same players.
That's the greatest part as a coach is watching that journey of that.
And these were senior citizens. My second baseman was 76 years old.
Oh no!
She could catch anything in the air. Ground balls, nope, not gonna get down there unless unless it bounced up above her knees.
I love it. We'll have to definitely have you on the show and talk some coaching and some sports.
Yep.
Appreciate you for coming,
guys.
on
Thank you
tonight.
very
Big
much. This
time.
was a lot of fun.
Been a great conversation. Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Good night,
See you
everybody.
next week.